Week 1 starting on Thursday officially, and for the Cardinals coming up on Sunday. How about we go around the NFC West, kind of get you set for what's ahead for the division rivals, and we're going to begin not at the top because that would be the Los Angeles Rams, but we're going to go with the biggest news, and that is the fact that the Seattle Seahawks now have another edge rusher, and that would be Jadeveon Clowney, acquired over the weekend, and something that really surprised a lot of people because the Texans and Clowney kind of going back and forth, franchise tagged. Is he going to sign? Is he not? I don't want to play there. I want to go to Seattle. I want to go somewhere else, and he winds up with the Seahawks. Could be a one-year rental. He does not have a contract after this season. Can't sign him until after this season. But Clowney, a former number 1 overall draft pick, 3-time Pro Bowler, now lining up with the Seahawks.
Yeah, great pickup, and there was a lot of speculation that maybe he was going to get traded to Miami, and a lot of people were saying, well, they should have kept Frank Clark. Well, Frank Clark was asking for $17 million a year. You know what? They're only paying Clowney half of that salary. So the Seahawks are on the hook for about $7 or $8 million, and then the Texans are on. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer. Obviously, they've upgraded that position. Seattle, for the first time in a couple years, I consider them an offensive-minded team. They run the ball. They're the only team last year that ran the ball more than they threw it, so to speak. They led the league in rushing. They got a 3-headed monster. Tyler Lockett, they're going to move him around a little bit more. Defensively, they've weathered the storm when it came to the the Legion of Boom. They got a lot of young players. Pete Carroll's background is defense. They got Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright. You throw in Clowney. They got some others, Ziggy Ansah. So I haven't made my predictions, but I think the Seahawks could win this division this year, or at least give the Rams fits.
Well, and it's a happy Bobby Wagner because he got his contract extension over the offseason. 3 years, $54 million. He's the highest paid linebacker in the game, and that's important to keep these players happy. But you talked about it. The Seahawks last season, 10-6, wild card. They'll open up hosting the Bengals, and it was a very lucrative offseason, dare I say, for the Seahawks because Russell Wilson got a nice contract extension as well. The highest paid player in the game, Russell Wilson.
And Cincinnati has a new head coach, and they got to go on the road in week 1. That's a difficult task for Cincinnati.
And so we'll see the Seahawks, the Cardinals will in week 4, but they open up at home against the Bengals. All right, the other news around the NFC West over the weekend, and this is really unfortunate for the San Francisco 49ers and their running back, Jerick McKinnon, once again landing on injured reserve. His season is done before it even begins. Last year missed all of 2018 after tearing his ACL, and now this year re-aggravated the knee. Sounds like he's going to need another procedure on the knee, and McKinnon back-to-back years on IR.
Well, I just remember the injuries last year. I mean, he obviously went down early, and then Matt Breida got a chance, and then they had Mike Davis there, and he signed with the Bears, I want to say. So obviously, it's going to be – they're still going to run the ball. I mean, I know they got a big tight end in George Kittle, and they got some weapons on the outside. They got some young receivers they've drafted over the last couple of years. They used the fullback. So, Kyle Shanahan is kind of very similar to Sean McVay, and obviously a guy like Andy Reid and Cliff Kingsbury, when we get a chance to see him, they run a lot of motion. They run a lot of 2 tight end personnel, fullback. So they want to line up and run the football and then utilize play action with Jimmy Garoppolo, who missed the majority of last season.
Yeah, all of a sudden that signing of Tevin Coleman looks a lot better for this 49ers team. You mentioned Garoppolo hurt in week 3 last season, was kind of up and down in preseason, but that's to be expected, and the 49ers have invested a heck of a lot in Garoppolo and need him to take that next step that they were hoping last year before he got hurt.
And I thought, Richard Sherman, he negotiated his own contract. I mean, I thought he played well last year, and, obviously when you switch teams, you got that spotlight on you, but I think he'll be better in year number 2 now that he knows the personnel around him.
And some good news defensively, Nick Bosa, for the first time, is actually practicing since early August. He had been bothered by an ankle injury, so it looks like The 49ers will have Nick Bosa this week as they play at the Buccaneers. Road game, but it is a late start on Sunday for the 49ers. All right, the last team in the division is the division winners, the NFC champion Los Angeles Rams, who, well, compared to the Seahawks and 49ers, were actually quiet over the weekend. But I don't think anyone thinks this team to be anything but a contender. Although I found this interesting. ESPN did a simulation of every team. I don't know if you saw this. They actually have the Rams starting off 0-3 and then finishing 9-6-1.
Well, the Rams going to Carolina in week 1.
Yeah, but 0-3?
No, I don't see that.
I don't see that either. But no, that week 1 opponent, Carolina, that's a tough one.
And that's a road game early start, where you mentioned when it comes to the 49ers, that's a late start against Bruce Arians, afternoon game. I think the Rams come back to earth. Now, I still think they're going to be a playoff team. Maybe 10-6, 11-5. They got to play a first-place schedule. Maybe what they showed in the Super Bowl, teams are going to try to mimic. Now, obviously, there's only one Bill Belichick out there, only one personnel on the Patriots. But the whole Gurley situation, I know they drafted a running back early. How do they approach that? Is he going to get X amount of carries per game? And then when we get to December and January, he's going to be the bell cow. Their offensive line, they've lost players over the last couple of years. Andrew Whitworth's getting up there in age. This could be his final year. They don't have a lot of depth. I looked at their depth earlier. They don't have a lot of depth, so they better make sure, like us, they're going to have to stay healthy. But obviously they got a team that can score points. Wade Phillips has done a really good job with that defense. But I don't see them 13-3, 14-2, and locking up a 1 or a 2 seed. I think they come back to earth, but still make the postseason.
It's going to be interesting to see exactly how much they get out of Todd Gurley. That was a huge talking point all off season. And then you have Cooper Kupp, who is coming back from an ACL. And he looks, according to everything you read based out of the Rams, he looks phenomenal.
They missed him last year.
You could just see the numbers.
Yes.
When Goff had Kupp on the field, and when he didn't, there was a significant drop back.
Well, they got guys that can stretch the field, but you like those slot guys, those guys that can get open on that shallow slot crossing route, and he was perfect for that. So I definitely thought they missed him, but he'll give them another option, especially on third down.
And the Rams still have Aaron Donald, who for the first time actually participated in off-season workouts and training camp, and we know when he didn't have any of that, he was still the best defensive player in the game.
We all know it starts up front. Sue is no longer there. He's in Tampa now, but on paper, I think their linebacking core has gotten a little bit better. They've invested in the last couple of years in the mid-round, so that's an area where they let Alex Ogletree go. He's with the Giants, and Wade Phillips said, hey, we can win without him. They had a couple linebackers last year who were making some plays, but I think they've done a good job drafting, so we're going to see some new faces at linebacker when it comes to the Rams.
And that is your look around the NFC West. We will do it every Monday here on Cards Cover 2, and of course, next week we'll actually have games to discuss on what happened elsewhere in the division.
I have a little trivia for you regarding the NFC West. Okay,
I'm not good on trivia.
Well,
it's all you, MJ.
Over the weekend, I looked up after Clowney was dealt to Seattle. I looked up the top NFC West pass rushers, current guys on NFC West teams, career sacks per game. So who would you say out of all of the pass rushers in the NFC West, who the top 3 guys are?
Well, Chandler Jones has got to be up there.
Yeah, D Ford, he's with the Niners now. He was hurt there for a while.
Yeah. So, but
yeah, I know. I'm just thinking
games played.
Oh, games played. Well, then I would throw in Terrell Suggs. He's got 132.
Jones,
I think
Suggs.
Yeah, Jones, Suggs, and
trying to think who else is on the Rams. They got rid of Robert Quinn.
Clay Matthews.
Dante
Fowler.
He hasn't been in the league long enough, I don't think.
But it's an average of per games played.
Per game,
so,
okay.
yeah.
I got you.
So
I'll go with Fowler, I guess. What's the answer?
All right, the top guys, the top 3 guys in terms of career sacks per game is number 1 with .76 sacks per game, which is phenomenal when you think about it.
Oh yeah.
Aaron Donald.
Wow.
Okay.
He's an interior lineman.
Yeah,
too. Think about that.
You don't think
That's a
about
great
him
trick
rushing
question.
the quarterback.
Number 2 with .76, or pardon me, with .75 is Chandler Jones.
Okay.
It's pretty close, even though one's an interior.
Number 3, out of all the NFC West pass rushers, career sacks per game, I never would have thought this. Ziggy Ansah, .60.
Yeah,
so he's efficient when he's in there.
Yeah, when he's healthy, he's right.
Okay,
and
yeah.
He's been in the league at least 4 or 5 years, but I know it's per game. I never would have guessed Aaron Donald. I should have. It's kind of a trick question, but he said pass rush.
Well, when you say pass rush, you don't think.
But he does get to the quarterback.
Yeah, no, he does.
Number 4 is Suggs with .59.
Okay.
Number 5 is Matthews, Clay Matthews, .58. And then we've got the San Francisco duo of Ford, .46, and Buckner, .45. And then Bosa, TBD. So it was interesting to kind of
very interesting.
Oh, and the guy that we started this conversation, Jadeveon Clowney, .47. So he's way off in terms of sacks, but as we all know, sacks aren't everything.
Well, yeah.
Disrupting plays.
MJ always calls it, your line. It's not just sacks, it's
hurries, pressures, and knockdowns lead to turnovers, get the quarterback off his spot. Now, that is the knock on Clowney. He's right. When you want to bring that up, kind of shows up in one game, but he's also been injured, and I think they just got fed up and they got something for him in return. But that's interesting to me. Games played, he's missed games, but there's some games maybe all the focus is on J.J. Watt. Okay, well that would free him up. Whitney Merciless, that would free him up. So, but there is times where he's played but hasn't really showed up on the stat sheet, and you would think that from a guy that was picked number 1 overall in the draft.
There were huge expectations for him.
In his
coming
5
out of
seasons,
school.
he's played 16, 15, 14, 13, and 4. So that one season he missed his rookie season. He missed a lot of time.
There you go.
Good job, Hums. That was a good one.
That was really good.
Hey, you know what? With Clowney too, it'd be interesting to see. You know how they always say pass rushers love the crowd noise at home. He's going to one of the loudest places. That split second, if a tackle can't tell when they're getting off the ball, and Clowney is watching the ball, then perhaps his sacks at home will rise up.
That's something we're gonna have to look for.
It's going to be an interesting
work for Frank
NFC
Clark.
West. Yeah, exactly. As we continue here on this Wednesday, Cards covered 2-time right now for Opposing Views, presented by State Farm. And this is our weekly look at the opponents. And this week is the Detroit Lions, a team that last year under then a first-year head coach, Matt Patricia, did not do as well as expected. 6-10, the fewest wins that they had since 2012, a down season. And all of a sudden, just like that, you read articles and you see stuff and hear stuff coming out of Detroit. This all of a sudden becomes a big season for Matt Patricia.
Yeah, and he changed coordinators. They moved on from Jim Bob Cooter, and they hired Darrell Bevell. Obviously, we're familiar with Darrell Bevell. He was in the division with the Seattle Seahawks. They like to run the football. Kerryon Johnson's their starter. When he's been healthy, he's been effective. And then you throw in C.J. Anderson, and then you look at the quarterback position. Even though he hasn't won a playoff game, he can still sling it. They got some weapons on the outside, so curious to see when it comes to Stafford, do they try to get the running game going and then take some shots, because we know the Cardinals are missing their 2 top corners. And then you look at the wide receivers, Kenny Galladay, he's a big target. He's played well against the Cardinals, been inconsistent throughout the season since he's been there. Marvin Jones is a speed guy, and then they signed Danny Amendola. They brought in some Patriots. Maybe they changed the culture a little bit along with Trey Flowers, so Amendola is the slot guy. And then their 2 tight ends, Jesse James, they signed from the Steelers, and then T.J. Hawkinson they drafted early in I think it was 8th overall. 8th overall, thank you. And so I got to think we're going to see some two tight end sets, but offensively, they're going to try to spin it down the field just based on the personnel the Cardinals have in the secondary.
Well, and Stafford, like the Lions as a team, did not have a great year, at least by his standard. Only 21 touchdowns, which was the fewest since 2012. And for the first time since 2010, didn't pass for more than 4,000 yards. And there were a lot of people believing that with that 8th overall pick, maybe the Lions should have looked at a quarterback at that point in the draft. But, and we were talking about this off air, when you have a franchise quarterback, even if that franchise quarterback maybe is not as successful as, the franchise next door, it's hard to find a really good quarterback. And even if people are down on Stafford, he's still, to me, one of the top 10, top 15 quarterbacks.
Probably top 15, yeah.
I mean, because of his ability, and you can still play in this league for a long, long time at the quarterback position if you so choose to, because of how this game is now officiated and played. You keep that quarterback upright, you can have some success.
Yeah, and you know, there's a reason why they got rid of Jim Bob Cooter. So, I mean, I think, when's the last time they had a 1,000-yard rusher? Was it Reggie Bush?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's been a long time. I mean, so, you know, when they had Calvin Johnson, they had these other receivers, they were throwing the ball down the field. He can make the throws, but they haven't really committed to the running game. I mean, they want to. They've had LeGarrette Blount there. They've had running backs. You know, Amir Abdullah, who the Cardinals like going in the draft, and they got David Johnson in the 3rd round that year. So, again, balance, but he can sit there and sling it. And, you know, the thing is, you got to get to him a little bit and get him off his mark, but easier said than done.
Well, Kerryon Johnson, I think, was trending towards 1,000 rushing yards before he got hurt. He only played 10 games because of a knee injury, so he landed on injured reserve. But 641 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns last season in 10 games. So, you know, that to me right there could be your 1,000-yard running back if you stay healthy.
Yeah, and he's going to share reps with C.J. Anderson. I don't know if they have a 3rd down back, but C.J. Anderson, he did a really good job behind a really good offensive line with the Rams last year. And, you know, C.J. Anderson's a guy that's played in multiple offenses. And, you know, I was reading some stuff earlier that in the running back room, he's got like 4 iPads going because he wants to explain everything to everyone else. So I thought that was a good pickup for them. And he can, if they ever get the lead, you know, you're going to see him pound the ball just like the Rams used him last year.
All right, let's flip it to the defense. And a big-ticket item for the Lions defensively, $90 million for Trey Flowers, defensive end, landing him from the Patriots. And now all of a sudden you look at that defensive line. We'll get to the linebackers and secondary, but that defensive line with the Trey Flowers and the Damian Snacks Harrison, you want to talk about stopping the run and even getting to that quarterback, the Lions have upgraded their defensive front.
Yeah, and I looked at their depth chart, and, you know, obviously it may not be official, but Mike Daniels is backing up right now. Mike Daniels was a huge signing for them. He left the Packers, and he decided to sign with the Lions, so, you know, he's looking forward to playing, you know, 2 games against them. Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest concern is just because of those joint practices and the physicality, you know. Patricia runs it very similar to Belichick, the blueprint. You know, Kingsbury thought earlier in the week, and maybe they're not going to bring in the blitz just because that's not their nature. They want to go man-to-man, win some one-on-one matchups, and then attack some of your weaknesses. That's how they kind of try to have you fold. But as we get later in the week here, I'm starting to wonder if you watch that Raiders game, in some of the Vikings game, and I think, you know, you look at John Gruden and Mike Zimmer, the way they called the defense, Paul Gunther, I got to anticipate we're going to see some blitzes just because you want to get him off his mark. You don't want him to get comfortable in the pocket.
True, but if it's something that you're not used to doing,
true,
and the Patriots, and that's where Matt Patricia came from, they don't blitz a lot, so you tend to go towards what you know and what you're used to and then pass that along to everyone else defensively. And then, as we talked about on the injury report, Jarrad Davis might not be 100% week 1, and that's certainly going to factor in as far as that linebacker is concerned. And then they certainly have Devon Kennard, the local product out of Desert Vista High School. He comes back home. So there's some uncertainty at linebacker with this Lions team to maybe – that's why you don't bring the pressure, just because they don't have the horses to do it.
No, that's a good point. And Jarrad Davis was a first-round pick. He was a tackling machine a year ago. And, again, he got hurt in the preseason. They thought it was more severe, so we'll just have to wait and see if he goes. He's not going to be 100% if he does. But he is obviously a guy that they ID'd as a first-round pick. And if you're Matt Patricia in your first year, you definitely want to load up on that defense, and you can just tell bringing some Patriot players over.
So Trey Flowers, the big-ticket item, but their best player maybe arguably in the secondary, certainly, but overall defensively, Darius Slay. Cardinal fans will remember he had a pick-6 last season, the first of his career, but that is maybe one of their stronger units in that secondary along with Justin Coleman. But Darius Slay, you figure, does he stay with one receiver? Does he move around? Depending on what the Cardinals do with their receivers, does he just play one side of the field, or is he following Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Crabtree, if Crabtree is able to go? So pay attention where Slade decides to line up.
Yeah, and when Murray was asked about the defense today, he just talked about how up front, how physical they are, and then he mentioned Darius Slay by name. So obviously that's the guy, and then you mentioned Coleman. But Slay's a really good player. Curious to see if they play man-to-man, or are they going to play a little zone just based on who's available. Maybe they're going to be without their top linebacker. So, again, that's a chess match that everyone's looking for when it comes to offense versus defense.
Lions will be arriving on Friday, which is what they did a year ago. And, of course, they won last season's matchup 17-3. And Patricia earlier this week saying, not that you have to get accustomed to the heat. You play indoors, but it worked a year ago, and that's what you see a lot, especially when you're traveling over 3 time zones. A lot of teams will leave on a Friday as opposed to Saturday.
Yeah, and get the guys acclimated. Obviously, it's not the 4-hour flight, maybe 3.5 from Detroit. And, obviously you want to be hydrated. But conditioning is an issue going into week 1 because these guys really, for the most part, Aaron Rodgers is going to play tonight. Last time he's taken a hit was, when they eventually shut him down last year. He didn't play at all in the preseason. So conditioning is always an issue, but being hydrated is more important. You can't start on Saturday. You got to start today as you get closer to the game.
3rd straight season that these two teams have met, and the 7th time in the last 8 seasons that the Cardinals are taking on the Lions, and that is coming up this Sunday at State Farm Stadium. That's just, it's a scheduling quirk. It happens,
also,
but it's very odd.
We usually, every team in the NFC plays another division, so you're going to get that. But I think it's because of where the teams have finished in the standings. That's the reason why we had so many games in the last 2 years against the Lions.